variety of teams. Like, we saw how different each team works, and that no one has really found the optimal way to play yet. Everyone was still trying out stuff, and we have seen a lot of champions that we think, or the majority thinks are strong, but we haven't seen them from a lot of teams. For example, Quinn and heavily under-prioritized Rice here on the patch. Yeah. But overall,
it's like, I think something that was very, very clear after yesterday was the fact that jungle had so high priority. We saw how the junglers were so impactful.
That Nidalee.
That Nidalee, though, skip that Nidalee. I don't like that Nidalee anymore. Oh, my goodness. In general, like, we saw, for example, the C9 H2K match. We saw 3 jungle bans coming in towards Rush, and it worked out eventually. And with that in mind, I'm really happy we get to see these high-caliber junglers on this particular patch.
Yeah, getting to watch and commentate the games yesterday, Papa Smithy, what were your thoughts?
I mean, just before the event, you know, it kind of felt like League of Legends Mythbusters when you're talking to analysts like yourself, Lamano, like yourself, Marcel, just because you're trying to work out what's strong, what's going to be contested. And we had 2 series where, honestly, it changed quite a bit. You know, the first series we saw Dr. Mundo not picked or banned in game 1, then it became a more contested pick later in the day. I don't even think these teams know already what's strong in the preseason, and that's why it's exciting for us to see each team. What do they value, and what are they happy to give up?
Yeah, we spent quite a bit of time yesterday, I remember, talking about, okay, well, maybe most of the teams are reverting back to some comfort picks because no one really knows for sure. You kind of want to test the waters out.
There's Trundle. Every team, I think, knows that Trundle is actually really strong because Last Whisper, of course, on this patch is very weak, and Trundle is basically giving the entire team like a Last Whisper for free. This way, Trundle has like such a high prioritization in the support role simply because of the Pillar too. Pillar is extremely strong currently, and of course, he's like a tanky melee that is like very hard to kill, and with his ultimate he like shreds tanks and like no.
Yeah, that's very true. So, I mean, I think all of us are kind of looking forward to what are we going to see in the picks and bans today. I think it's an interesting look at, will the teams who played yesterday maybe change things up? Meanwhile, we still don't know exactly how well prepared Fnatic and Ever are going to be. Their first look here at IEM Cologne is going to be here on day 2. And our first match, of course, Fnatic going up against QG. All of you guys can let us know at home what you think. Who do you think is going to win? Go over to twitter.com/IEM. Let us know your thoughts, especially on the Fnatic new roster. There's a lot of hype around that. We'll get to that in just a bit. But let's take a look first on the day 1's performance of QG.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the caster's desk here for IEM Cologne. We have got a fantastic match already on our hands, of course. So the QG going up against Dignitas. Here, Kirei forced to get the heck out towards the back of that fight. TCT was too deep. We've heard that one before. I think it's going to be a 3-for-0 fight. Mini J going to go forward as well. Did he manage to shrug off that Frozen 2 with his riposte? Possibly. We're going to go towards the next there. Dignitas have done it. What a quick finish there as well. And there is Mini J. He's on top of him. He gets the finish off there. And Swifty trying to return some damage too. But will he go down? You better believe it. It's Mini J. It's a triple kill. The bullet time is going to be coming out, and TCT blocks a heck of a lot of that one. Apollo will fall, the rat-a-tat-tat, claiming its target, and this is it. He's forcing his flash out. Rat-a-tat-tat coming through. It's a one-man shockwave. That's it. It's not going to be enough for Dignitas if they keep playing it like that. Look at Joint B. Lays another death rate down there as well. B's gotten involved in the fight, and he's going to spread that damage everywhere. Chaogu are going massive. That Nexus will fall, and there's nothing that Dignitas can do. GG! They managed to hold B in place, but is it enough to kill him? I'm not sure. Justice falls down. It's a double kill for TNT. 3 players for Dignitas have fallen, and they've made a fight in their own base, and they might pay for it with the game. They're going to push on towards this Nexus, and ladies and gentlemen, we have our first semi-finalist, QG.
And there you have it. Quite a good performance from QG in game 2 and 3, of course, picking up from their mistakes in game 1. But the question remained at the end of the day yesterday was, how much of it really was credit to QG? What do you guys think now having the night to kind of sleep over it?
I mean, the thing that really struck me, what I really took away from that series is that Chaogu won 2 games, but it was the same Chaogu. They still struggled in the early game. They definitely didn't seem to have a good handle on the new patch, weren't really valuing Trundle. We mentioned champions like Mundo going through in the first pick and ban. So it felt they were just defaulting to old strategies, yet still overpowering this new Dignitas lineup.
I feel like it's a classic LPL problem where they kind of struggle to adapt to the meta. They are stuck in their own thing. They keep playing Victor, they keep playing Nidalee. And with that in mind, I feel like they need to do some serious adaptation because I didn't like their pick and ban phase at all.
Yeah, I think the player to watch probably today is Swift, if he can up his performance, because We said Swift is like a really good player, but I think he had like a really shaky start here at the tournament already. And I really want to see him move away from the Nidalee, because I think Nidalee is like one of the most overrated champions overall, because the thing is why Nidalee is being picked so often is because of scrim results, I think.
Okay.
Nidalee kills all the people in scrims. It's like going 10-0 all the time. It's like, all right, guys, we're just going to do the same thing on stage. And then on stage, people play a lot more safe, are reacting better. And we talked about this. The second Nidalee hits the mid game, and she's 0-0-0 and can't do anything, the spears hit for like 100 damage. There's like not enough... she doesn't have anything to like have a comeback mechanic or be useful, because she doesn't provide CC. And magic resist is like so easy to stack right now. So... That's why I think Nidalee is not that good.
And I feel like the biggest issue with Nidalee is probably the AP jungle item. I think it's horrible compared to the other ones. And usually like Nidalee versus Lee Sin, this match we saw yesterday in the C9 versus H2K game, it's very dynamic, but at this point in the patch, when Lee Sin reaches the point where he gets his AD jungle item, Nidalee kind of falls off very hard.
And let's talk a little bit more about what Nidalee's facing, because since the previous patches, suddenly Nidalee's finding all these potatoes that we called them yesterday, all these tanks. Okay, Nidalee can do respectable damage to squishy champions like the Fiora and Riven that we were seeing previously. When your top laners are like some Malphite, even if Nidalee gets ahead, like we saw Rush do yesterday, not always going to be doing any damage in the mid game.
You're still going to fall off a little bit, and like you guys mentioned, that is kind of what we saw yesterday. Now, the other big question, you mentioned Swift, and how is he going to perform today? But he's got a different challenge today going up against Fnatic. Let's take a look at Fnatic and their new roster coming into IEM Cologne.
The departure of 3-star players to North America has completely and utterly changed the face of World Championship semi-finalists Fnatic. Replacing the legendary Yellow Star and the brilliant duo of Huni and Rainova is no small task, but under direction of Coach Daylor, Fnatic have begun to rebuild.
I'm really excited to play with the new players, because I know that we can make the team good, because we have a really good organization, a really good coaching staff, and I'm really confident that our roster will be strong.
With superstars Reckless and Forbidden remaining with the team, the last piece of the puzzle may be Fnatic's key to returning to the very top.
Well, personally, I would really like to win this tournament, but my real goal is to win Worlds, because losing it a few months ago, I thought we could do better. I thought we could go into the final, but we dropped out in semi-finals, so I really don't want that to happen again.
Fnatic look to rise from the ashes, and dominant execution in Cologne will be their perfect springboard into 2016.
So there we have it, a new roster for Fnatic. There was a lot of talk about this change, because they had a successful year. I mean, there's no doubt that this wasn't because of some downfall of Fnatic. I mean, they had as successful a year as you could hope, but they still had this roster change, players leaving the organization, and now they fill out their roster with Gamsu coming in, Spirit in the jungle, of course, Noxio in support. But I want to start with Spirit. Spirit versus Swift. We're no strangers to those two kind of going up against each other since their debuts back in Korea.
And just talking about Spirit, on this IEM stage, it wasn't just a few months ago at Katowice where he was the story. Everything was about Spirit and him propelling World Elite to the final. This guy is a wonderfully strong jungler. But I mean, just coming back to Fnatic's change, we shouldn't be surprised. It almost feels like 1 year ago. It was, of course, Fnatic rebuilding around Yellow Star. They made a strong lineup. This time they actually managed to keep 2 of their players. And you look at the imports on paper, you know, taking away things like language barrier, you know, taking away Rainova, bringing in Spirit. Any of our Champions fans that are watching know that Spirit's much vaunted in many scenes around the world. Gamsu had his moments on Dignitas, so at least on paper, it's looking competitive or potentially an upgrade in terms of potential for the Fnatic lineup.
For sure, I have to agree. But the person I'm looking at is Noxiak, of course. I've had the opportunity to work with him in the past in Amateur Makers. And with that in mind, Noxiak is a player that has one of the best mindset I've ever come across in League of Legends. Okay. He is a person that is very, very easy to work with. And I see a very, very bright future for him in Fnatic. But I feel he needs time. I don't think he's going to fill the Yellow Star boots right away, but this is a person that needs time. Mechanically, he's really, really strong. He needs to, of course, at the risk of sounding like a one-string banjo, he needs the time to become that shot caller that Yellow Star was for Fnatic.
Yeah, I think we should also mention Philvin. I think he's probably by far the strongest player at this tournament overall, in my eyes, because at Worlds he showed why he is probably one of the top 5 mid laners in the world. I mean, of course, everyone knows the story about him solo killing Faker, him like dominating several teams, and Summer Split playing against Fnatic is like even when mid lane was such a farm fest, you know, Fevin is always there to pick them up. They had a rough early game start because Huni and Rainover like sometimes did like a bit of overcommitments. Fevin was always there to carry like the entire team, and I think he's like really good, and it's gonna be like really important because he's gonna play more of a leadership role, probably in Fnatic. And we're gonna see how they do as a team.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like you mentioned, Papa, earlier or last year rather, it was around Yellowstar, and I was like, all right, we have this long-time veteran, we're gonna build around him. They take a year to succeed quite a bit, and now it's Febiven kind of having to carry that torch alongside Reckless, of course, but also just given how the roles work in League of Legends, mid is probably gonna have a little bit more pressure in terms of now we expect you to lead the team because Reckless has a lot of other things to worry about in terms of his own play when it comes to AD carries and the bottom lane duels.
I mean, things change so fast in League of Legends. 1 year on, the most veteran player on this squad is Febiven in the mid lane. He's the one that's been there the longest. Of course, Reckless had his time away and came back. But the lineup has a lot of potential. As you mentioned, Noxiac's the biggest question mark. And then communication. We're talking about a new support in the scene, or at least in this top level of the scene with the spotlight on him that Noxiac has now. And he has to be able to have this support jungle synergy that we've talked so much about this weekend with Spirit, who doesn't necessarily have a big command of English. Okay, a wonderfully strong carry mindset jungler. How will that jungle support synergy come, especially under the spotlight, what, a week, 2 weeks into this lineup's existence?
Yeah. So obviously we have to talk about the coaching stuff to a Fnatic. I mean, everyone is like questioning the coaching stuff. It's like, okay, can Daylor make it work? Can he make another successful roster, make another run at Worlds? And I think right now in the picks and bans, we can probably get like the first taste of how good the coaching stuff is, if they prepared like what we expect them to prepare. I think Fnatic probably has like one of the strongest picks and bans, I think, hopefully. It's just like an estimated guess, but I think they're going to bring out stuff and going to be very smart about picks and bans and won't do like rookie mistakes like drafting the top-end jungle for the top-end support role in the same rotation when they can flex it longer. I don't think Fnatic is like a team that makes such rookie mistakes, kind of, and we can probably attribute that to Daylor.
And it's like, I think with that point, I feel like Fnatic, with in mind the fact that pick and ban has been so important throughout the tournament, I feel like Fnatic is a strong favorite because I have a lot of faith in Daylor. But looking at this roster as a whole, comparing it to the old Fnatic roster, I feel like they have the opportunity now to also play around the bot lane. The old Fnatic strategy was so set around Huni and Rainover playing around top. I feel like they can play both ways, and they can play more dynamically now with the aggressive support Noxiac is.
Yeah, now that you bring that up, I am interested in how that's going to work out for Spirit, because the old Huni Rainover, I mean, they are a duo, of course. They left as a duo. They came in as a duo. That's kind of, they've already decided that's their brand, and that's how they're going to work no matter which team they go to. But when it comes to Spirit, like he's gone through a lot of different teams. He's had to change his playstyle a couple times, and he's made it succeed. He's been able to solo carry. He's been able to kind of be that backup for his teams back in Korea. And now here, what's his role when you have kind of those superstars like Reckless and Fevin both in the bottom and mid? Yesterday, you guys said probably still now the focus in this new meta is going to be the jungle and support and their synergy. Do you think maybe we won't see that as much because Noxiac hasn't had much time to gel in with
I mean, I actually had the pleasure to play a lot of duo queue with Noxiac like a week ago or something.
Okay.
And I could like see progress over time because like me and him, like we obviously are both German. And I think he's like a really good player, and he's, like I said, like Yamato said already, he needs time, and this like really good opportunity for him to get like some experience on an international stage, get like looking forward to the spring split, of course. But I think it's gonna be really important to see how him and Spirit work out, simply because of the language barrier.
Okay. Power Smithy, what about you? We've talked a lot about Fnatic and kind of what we can look forward to in terms of their strengths, but now comparing that back in perspective to the QG Reapers and their performance so far, would you say, yeah, the advantage still goes to Fnatic?
I mean, the big question mark, the one member of Fnatic that we haven't talked about, it's that top laner. It's Gamsu, their new top laner, who I have to say, when I was most impressed with this player was when he was playing full damage Jarvan LPL style for Dignitas. He pulled it off. He was able to play carry style. So, we're talking about them abandoning the top focus. Maybe Gamsu does have the same chops as Huni to really impress us. It's such a different lineup for him, moving from this Dignitas squad, especially last year's squad, that really was struggling in the mid-table and the lower table, to Fnatic, who have played the Fnatic way. They've set up their top laner. Maybe Gamsu gets a shot at that before they eventually develop into a different style as the season goes on.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like you really hit the nail in the coffin by saying, like, when you look at the previous Dignitas roster with Gamsu, I feel like whenever they had success, was because of Gamsu just going ham in a game with Hecarim or Jarvan. And with that in mind, I feel like the possibility is to play around Gamsu, but the beauty of it is that they also can play around the bot lane. And I feel like this dynamic thing you got going on is very, very important coming in to this type of tournament.
Okay. And then Fevin, we've talked about his individual skills so far, but going against Doinby didn't look so hot yesterday on day one. Do you think this is something that Fnatic can really take advantage of and maybe even just start the snowball right there from the mid lane?
It depends. Fevin is like an excellent assassin player. We've seen a lot of Kassadin. LeBlanc is like kind of viable too, I would say. She's like a very good last pick, of course. And I think, but Fnatic is always about that consistency, like a very high damage type mage in the mid lane, like Azir, Ryze, and I think Fevin played like a lot of Ryze too in his off time, so we can expect probably like more of a control mage style where he needs time to farm up a bit and then takes over like in the mid to late game.
Okay, sounds good. So generally what I'm gathering from you three gentlemen then is that, yeah, on paper we're going to have to give the edge to Fnatic. Would you say that's a fair assessment of this matchup?
I think it's very fair, very fair.
All right.
And we talk about the jungle matchup again, Swift versus good old Spirit. The big question mark is Doinby. He looked shaky yesterday, but this team in the early games always have been about Doinby playing the likes of the Morgana, the likes of the Nautilus mid, if you believe it, and just wave clearing and helping out Swift try to dictate the early pace. So if we see a return, say the Morgana mid, Morgana with the Frost Queen's claim, good in the support role, good in the mid role as well. It's all about him pushing and leaving lane. It's not ideal in the 1v1 sense, but that's where QG's seen the most success, so can they make it work here?
All right. Of course, we asked you fans at home what you thought. If we take a look here, is it going to be Fnatic or QG? I would assume that most people at home, and especially given that we are playing in Cologne, and right now it is more prime time for Europe, you're probably going over for Fnatic. But yeah, the 89%, that's probably the biggest vote. Yeah, we're going to see. But, all the regional favoritism, everything aside, I think this is probably a fair assessment, given that we've also seen kind of the glaring weaknesses of QG yesterday, and that they're old weaknesses. It's not something new that Fnatic has to sit down and be like, all right, how do we change this? It's probably, if you were working for Fnatic at all, that's what you're expecting coming into this matchup. And you're like, okay, nothing's changed with QG. We can play the way we planned to for the last week, and it's going to be fine. Any final thoughts on the matchups? Anything else you think we should bring? I think we covered kind of all the different lanes and all the matchups.
I think definitely the question mark for QG is once again pick and ban, and of course Swift. If they solve these two issues in one day, then I think they might stand a chance.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be a great improvement. That's probably the fastest improvement we'll see in a long time in League of Legends for a team to fix kind of those issues. Of course, we mentioned it earlier, that Nidalee jungle. Is it going to be a contended pick at all? Because that was, I mean, both of you guys were a little bit miffed by that yesterday. The fact that it was coming up so often in both games, too.
I'm going to cut you both off. The answer is yes. Come on. It's Swift and it's Spirit. Spirit has been spamming that champion in solo queue, trying to level up in EU West. I mean, Swift played it 3 out of 3 times. We will see Nidalee jungle today.
You think so?
Yes.
I'm so sad.
I hope not.
I hope not.
I hope
I mean, isn't there a chance that Spirit is also just so much more confident that he's like, let's just ban it. Let's see what else Swift's got.
I mean, that's
could
happen.
happen.
It's going to be involved in
Fix and ban. Actually, yeah, it'd be a little weird if we saw the Nidalee ban, actually.
It's like a trend that I've seen with Nidalee. It's like usually the players that are really good at Nidalee are usually really, really good at Kindred. So I feel like if Kindred's going to get through, I feel like Spirit's going to bust it out. That is the prediction I'm making.
Well, it'd be a little crazy to see Kindred get through, though. I think that'd be a little crazier than seeing the Nidalee so much yesterday, just about getting ready for picks and bans. What about, as we get ready for this, and since we might just kind of roll right through it, Dr. Mundo, do you think we're going to see that prioritized a little bit more today? Yesterday, sure, once it came up, it started being banned a little bit, but it still seemed like hindsight for most of the teams.